Good evening and welcome to the October 10th, 2016 work session. I'd like to call that to order for the York County School Board. We've had some pretty nasty weather, and I'm sure some of you have been affected by the weather. Hopefully your homes are fine and your yards and no injury. Can't help but feel awfully blessed and fortunate based on what other folks have gone through around around the country. So thank goodness for that. All righty, well, we're going to move right into our presentations, and Dr. Shander, would you like to go ahead and share some information?
Thank you, Dr. George. Good evening, board members. We have three presentations this evening. Our first presentation, I'm going to ask Dr. Tony Vladu to please come to the podium for a strategic plan update presentation relating to objective under Goal 1, and then he's going to share information relating to objectives under Goal 2. Dr. Vladu.
Good evening, Chairman George, members of the board, and Dr. Shandor. During the September work session, I provided you with an update on several objectives under Goal 1. Tonight, I'll provide you with an update on one additional objective under Goal 1 and two objectives under Goal 2. Goal 1 of the strategic plan states that York County School Division students will consistently demonstrate growth and excellence in the skills and knowledge needed to be productive citizens. One objective under Goal 1 for growth and excellence relates to the enrollment of underrepresented students in advanced English and math classes at the middle school level. Throughout this presentation, the blue bars represent annual targets, while the green bars represent annual performance. The graph on this slide shows both annual targets and performance under this objective. Growth on this objective is measured by Black student enrollment in advanced English classes, grades 6 through 8, Foundations of Algebra, Algebra 1, and Advanced Geometry. As this graph shows, over the past year, we had a 0.05, or 0.5% decrease in the percentage of Black students enrolled in advanced middle school courses. As it relates to our progress since FY14, we have increased performance on this goal by 0.02, or 1/5 of a percentage point. This level of performance shows that a lot more work needs to be done on this objective. The previous graph showed the enrollment of our Black students in advanced classes. This graph, however, shows the enrollment of our economically disadvantaged students in advanced English and math classes, grades 6 through 8. While last year we saw a decline in the percentage of economically disadvantaged students enrolled in advanced middle school classes, this year our school increased to 11.4%, and this level of performance is 0.02, or 1/5 of a percentage point from reaching our target. Last year I have reviewed the criteria for enrolling in advanced middle school classes. As such, I want to take a few moments to review this criteria again for our view in public. For most students, advanced class placement begins in grade 6 with Advanced English 6 and Foundation of Algebra, also known as FOA. Grade 6 advanced course enrollment is important because most students continue to take English 7 and English 8, as well as algebra and geometry. As you review the criteria in the slide, it is important to remember that students do not have to meet all, but the majority of the criteria above. As such, student placement is not determined solely by any single factor. While our schools have made growth in the enrollment of economically disadvantaged students, more work will need to occur to increase enrollment of our Black students in these advanced classes. At this time, I would like to shift to Goal 2 for engagement and rigor. The first objective I will address tonight under Goal 2 relates to career and technical certificates, state licenses, and national occupational assessment credentials. Tonight, I'm pleased to report that the percentage of all 2016 graduating seniors earning at least one credential increased from 72 to 77%, for a total of 782 credentials graduates. Back during the September work session, information pertaining to the CTE certifications of our seniors on the standard diploma was requested. Tonight, I can report that 75% of students on the standard diploma that graduated this past June earned at least one industry certification. As a result of the new graduating requirements and the integration of the WISE test into economics and personal finance, it was expected that our numbers grew from 22 to 72% last year. However, even after meeting these new requirements, we continue to grow. Notably, our students and teachers have consistently exceeded performance on this goal over the past 3 years. We have come a long way since FY13, and we exceeded the FY17 benchmark 1 year ahead of schedule. While the previous graph showed our growth in the number of industry credentials awarded, this chart shows a breakdown by type. Whereas last year, our graduating senior class had earned a total of 686 industry credentials, this year I'm proud to report that the number of seniors with one or more industry credentials grew to 782, or approximately 77% of all graduating seniors. Our state licensures earned primarily at New Horizons Regional Education Center, more than double over the previous year, for a total of 19 licensures. Industry certifications comprising of workplace readiness skills, Microsoft Wise Financial Literacy, and Adobe accounted for 59% of the total credentials awarded. While there's a decrease in the percentage of these certifications due to the larger graduating class, the number of certifications earned is slightly up from the previous year. The number of workplace readiness skills credentials accounted for the largest gains. In this regard, we increased from 172 to 262, while occupational certifications measured by the National Occupational Competency Test and state professional licenses accounted for the remainder of the credentials. Notably, this year we increased the York County School Division graduates that earned 2 or more industry certifications from 255 to 359, representing an increase of 104 students. Our growth on this objective is primarily attributed to 2 factors. First, we saw an increase in the number of workplace readiness skills over the past year. As a reminder, this test was developed as a result of extensive research of Virginia employer needs, and this assessment gauges student knowledge on 21 job essential skills such as work ethic, integrity, teamwork, collaboration, communication, and job-specific skills. Second, as mentioned, the number of state licenses earned by students in New Horizons Regional Education Center more than doubled over the previous year. Lastly, beginning with the class of 2017, all students earning the standard diploma are required to have 1 industry certification, so we expect these gains to continue. The final objective I will address tonight on the goal 2 relates to the integration of online learning and face-to-face instruction within the same course. As we look at this chart, the blue bars represent annual targets, while the green bars represent performance on this goal. For FY15, the percentage of secondary teachers integrating online learning was 32%. This past year, however, we saw an increase of 32 percentage points, for a total of 64% of teachers that integrated online learning within the same face-to-face course. Blended learning opportunities provided opportunities for our teachers and students to extend learning beyond the classroom and outside of the school day. Some examples include posting and responding to discussion forums, using online classroom resources, or meeting the teacher in a live online session for homework help. We're pleased to see the integration of blended learning into traditional face-to-face classes, and our teachers and staff are to be commended for the growth on this objective. As I conclude this presentation, I would like to take a few moments to review our growth on this objective. Beginning in FY15, middle school students enrolled in mathematics and world language high school credit-bearing courses completed 8 hours of blended learning. More recently, blended learning extended to middle school English, science, and social studies classes. Lastly, schools included the implementation of blended learning into their school improvement plans. School leaders deliberately promoted the incorporation of virtual and blended learning at their schools as sound instructional practices that maximize student learning. As such, this practice is expected to continue. As I conclude this update, I want to thank you for the opportunity to present the work of our teachers, students, and their families on these objectives. At this time, the presentation is open for your comments and questions.
Not everybody at once.
I'd like to go back up to the slide about the Black middle school students enrolled in advanced courses and then next, the economically disadvantaged students. Can you just tell me exactly what it is I'm seeing? Is that 8.3% of our Black middle school students, or is that a growth rate?
That is a question that actually would shed some more light on what you're saying. It's actually 8.3% of student enrollment in those classes. So that does not take into consideration the overall numbers in our schools, which may vary. In that the denominator and the numerator of the number of Black students in our schools. So that is the class composition.
Okay, so it's of the class composition, it's 8.3% are Black middle school students
Correct.
across the division and all four
In the advanced classes.
in the advanced classes.
Yeah, so if you take all the advanced students that are sitting in those classes in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade that he spelled out, 8.3% of them are Black.
Okay, now my next question would be some follow-up information that I would need. What is the percentage of Black students enrolled in the middle school, at the middle school level? So I can find out, well, do we have 20% Black students in middle school, and then now we have 8% of those enrolled, to try to get the bigger picture?
I do have some numbers for you. So if
Okay.
you're looking at all of our Black students, 34% of them are enrolled in advanced courses at the middle school level.
Okay.
Are you able to break that down school by school? Can you skip
That
us
data would be available,
Yeah.
and we could get that.
Dr. Vladu, I think the question was, what's the percentage of Black students in the general population at middle school? So she can compare the 8.3%, because that's their makeup in the advanced classes, to their makeup in the general population at the middle school level.
And I have that number as well. It is 12.3%.
Okay. And then of that 12%, 34% are enrolled in advanced classes.
That is if you were to take all of our African-American students at the middle school level, grades 6 through 8, 34% of them are enrolled in one or more classes.
But again, the total percentage of Black students at the middle school level, regardless of advanced or not, is 12.3, is what I'm hearing.
12.3% is the percentage of the general population
Right.
At the middle school
at
level.
the middle school level.
And 34% of the 12% are enrolled in advanced classes. Gotcha.
34% of all Black students at the middle school level are taking one or more of those classes.
Okay. How do we see how that relates to the number of Asian students, Hispanic students, and white students, and the percentage of that overall enrollment that are taking advanced classes? So we can find out, are there 50%, or how does it compare?
I have those numbers for you as well. There are a total of 2,986 students at middle school, and 1,565 students are enrolled in one or more advanced courses.
What was that number again, 16,
1,565.
1565 in advanced?
Dr. Vladu, if you could probably provide the comparison, like what's the percentage of white students that are in advanced classes, and then what's their percentage in the general population? And do the same for Asian and Hispanic. What I can share with you overall is white students and Asian students are, there's a higher percentage of students in advanced classes than there are in the overall population. Hispanic students are pretty close to equivalent in terms of their percentage in the overall population and their percentage in the classes, but he can give you the specifics.
Okay.
And we can share this now, but we'll
Yeah.
also include this in Friday notes so you can have it.
That would be great.
Yeah. Go ahead, Todd.
If you have that
I
information with
do
you.
have the overall. I think if we go subgroup by subgroup, but I can give you this statistic. 52.4% of all students at the middle school level are taking one or more advanced courses.
Wow.
Now, we could break that down again by subgroup, and I think we could provide that data at a later time.
And Friday notes will be fine.
That's great, thank you.
My question, and I hesitated because I wanted to just get others' perspective on the information that you presented. As I look at this, and I look at the numbers are not where we want to, well, two questions. You all are the educators. I'm not, I'm healthcare. How would you approach, what signals or concerns that you have when you look at data like this? How do you approach the data to make a change? Is it from an educational perspective, what do you want to do?
I think that relates to this slide. We have delved into this data quite a bit in several meetings since the beginning of the year. So what we're trying to do is to get more information, what percentage of our African-American students are actually reaching that 75th percentile on the Stanford thing, or for English 6, Advanced English 6, and the 89th percentile for math. We're also looking at the grades. That way we have better, more specific targets. Are we missing it because, maybe, for instance, are a few students at 73rd percentile and they're almost there? Can we reach down and get, those students? These are achievement tests, and sometimes we also have to look at potential. So I think our teams are really looking at that data very specifically to establish some very goals that are achievable, and then sequential. So we've heard about professional learning communities. We actually have a professional learning community simply devoted to addressing this need.
And I guess for me, and I've been around this table year after year, and my comments have always been, you give me data. Now you need to convert that data, I guess to say, and let me see some improvements. I don't want you to come with just data to say, these are it. I wanna hear you back a plan to go along with the data, to say, okay, we are here. What do we need? And I would love to see it across all four middle schools, if we can, in the Friday report, to say where are our weaknesses, where are our strengths, and how are we going to maintain what we have but yet improve and not
But
drop
clearly, we
lowers.
have a lot of room for improvement. So.
We do have quite a bit of room for improvement. Within that, I think there are some sort of, so to speak, pockets of excellence where these things are happening throughout our school division, so we have to learn from those examples. That's what this is looking at, specifically this data, because as we talked earlier, this is the percentage of classes. For instance, some schools may look really good on this objective because it doesn't take into consideration the number of Black students in schools. It takes into consideration the number in advanced classes. So that specific look into that data to provide, okay, well, this is working at this school. Can we learn from the school and translate that to other areas? So that, again, I think I attended a couple, we just talked a little bit about today. Actually, we had a meeting and we talked about with the team that is looking at improving this, and they have some very specific data pieces to inform this. Now, having said that, it really goes back to challenging our kids to do better and having high expectations. Really, as an educator, I think that's very important. There's some kids that can do this work, but may not meet that criteria that's on that slide. So how do we reach down and lift up those students because they have the potential? We know that if you're in an advanced English 6 class, you're more likely to take AP, you're more likely to have a higher academic trajectory. So that's the challenge into reaching down, and perhaps you've got a 70% tile on that math test. Well, it doesn't mean that we should exclude you from the opportunity to take those classes.
And I'm also thinking how much of your work goes into elementary school. Even with reading on grade 3 level, going back to those early years and setting that foundation and building on it, where do you see dropping down to elementary to get, because you here, including 6th graders?
We see that as a part of the answer to this. So for instance, we're taking at 5th grade level and 3rd grade level reading. All of that is important. But having said that, we have ELL students that, and I've talked to them, they come to this country and 2 years later, they're in advanced English 6 or 7. So even though sometimes that background may not be there, I don't think that's a reason alone to not try to reach students even though they didn't meet that 3rd grade reading mark. So I think it is sort of a mind shift in looking at this, the criteria a little bit differently, and perhaps look at potential rather than perhaps achievement.
You know, and I think that is so important, especially in the elementary years. And a teacher's role is vital, because if the teacher sees someone that may not be at that level right now, but they see the potential in that person, the teacher can have such a dramatic effect by just encouraging that child and just by saying, I see potential in you, you're going to do great things, let's get you on a head start, let's get you working toward this goal. And I know we have so many wonderful teachers who are doing that, and I hope that's encouraged throughout the division.
I think that's key, the expectations that the students with the right amount of support, they're gonna be successful in those classes, that is key.
Tony, you gave us a number of how many total students in our school division that are taking the advanced courses.
The middle
Like
school level.
50, middle school, it's like 52.
52.4.
We had total, this is all students, 1,565 students that are taking advanced classes at the middle school level.
Then y'all also look at what's happening in our high schools in the same percentage. My question, depending on what the percentage is, of these students, do y'all track to see which ones are taking these courses and choose to go on to higher ed college? Do we know what's the percentage of our students that will go to college versus a career tech route or the military, compared to the ones taking the advanced courses? Does it kind of align itself to the advanced course takers are the ones that are in college, or?
Well, generally, yes. To answer part of that question is that our kids that are taking advanced courses, they're sort of gonna be working toward their advanced diploma. So students on the advanced diploma are more likely to go to college. And as far as looking at, our counselors do track that data, what percentage go into the military, what percentage go on to 4-year colleges, 2-year colleges. But in terms of relating specifically, if you're enrolled in Advanced English 6, do we track you all the way to, UVA, Tech? We don't quite have that level of detail.
Do you want to add one thing?
I did, to your question, Mrs. Haywood. With regard to our Black students, it has been very perplexing because the elementary schools have been focused on this. The middle schools have been focused on this. And so the PLC team really is looking at cutting up the data in every different way so that we can figure out what is the barrier, what's getting in the way, because we haven't made any progress on this objective. And so we've got to determine the barrier. And one of the things that we talked about is when we put this objective in place, we didn't do anything to change this criteria. Meanwhile, the norm on the Stanford test was actually changed to a new norming period. So we don't know whether that's played a part, but we have tasked the IT department, Terrence Brown. We've asked him for a lot of different ways to look at this data so that we can actually look at every student that came into the middle school in terms of their grades that they came in, their Stanford scores, so that we can try to figure out what was the barrier, and do we need to change some of those recommendations, because we're disappointed, and it's not through a lack of effort by our schools, but something's getting in the way. And so that's what one of the teams in our department has been tasked to look at, is to try to figure out what's the barrier, and that we have our goal is to develop a plan by February so that we can make recommendations so that we can address this, because we're not happy with our performance, but it's not been through a lack of work by both the elementary schools and the middle schools. But we're going to
That
continue
might
to
be
tackle it.
something for a further discussion as to how to tap into the population.
Absolutely.
And whether it's smaller meetings, and again, looking at in the communities to say,
But we do plan focus
what is
groups.
it that you want your student to accomplish, your particular student? And this is how we see it if you're looking at a long-term focus over all the years in school. So yeah, that'd be interesting to look more closely at.
Just one last question from me, and this is information you can give me in the Friday report, but I would like to know if the percentage of our economically disadvantaged students, if that is staying level or if that has increased or decreased, just so I can get an idea. I mean, it looks like we've jumped up almost a percentage point with the number of economically disadvantaged middle school students enrolled in advanced classes since last year, but I'd just like to find out if that's numbers on the rise and how that compares.
Or if they changed in the general population. We have that information.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate
Good
it.
information, thank you.
Appreciate it.
All right.
Congratulations, Doctor.
Well, thank you very much.
Yes, I'm not, I
Yes,
asked the same
yes,
questions,
yes.
like when did the, what do they call it, when do you
Defense.
defend your,
We did.
Well, I was fortunate to have that opportunity 2 Mondays ago, so it's,
Cool.
very fresh.
who was on the team that was,
Dr. Strong, James Strong, and Dr. Grant, you may know her as well, and Dr. DePaula.
okay, well, congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Good job.
Wonderful. Okay, we're going to move on to class size. Dr. Shander.
All right, at this time, Dr. Carroll, Chief Human Resource Officer, is going to provide information pertaining to class size as it relates to our strategic plan. Dr. Carroll.
Thank you, Dr. Shandor, Chairman George, members of the board. In our last work session, I reported preliminary numbers and status reports on staffing. Tonight, I submit to you a strategic plan update for Goal 2, engagement and rigor. The purpose of this objective is to monitor the board's commitment to smaller class sizes. Ratio data presented tonight will reflect the status of the division as of the 10-day count of students who enrolled and attended during that 10-day window. The class size objective is stated here. To give our class sizes context, the state maximum class sizes are 24 students for kindergarten and 29 if you provide a dedicated paraeducator. 30 students for grades 1 through 2, 35 students for grades 3 through 5. It needs to be emphasized that the target ratios listed are for division averages and that there will be individual school and classroom results that differ, and all ratios are dependent on multiple factors. Decisions on shifting resources to address variances are made after taking into account enrollment variance, paraeducator support, and principal and level director input. The state has no class size limit for grades 7 through 12. Our division target ratio for secondary core classes is listed here. The only exception to this is the limit for English classes that must average 24 students. Another point of emphasis here is that the allocation decisions are always subject to our available resources. So here we have all the division average class sizes listed across all levels with the division targets and state limits listed at the bottom of the slide. In elementary, we monitor individual grades as well as K through 2 and 3 through 5 averages. In middle and high, we monitor the class sizes in the different content areas. As you can see, we are below all division targets across the board. In our last work session, members asked for data on individual classes. You'll find in your folders a supplemental listing for each class recently at the elementary level. Please note that many of those classes also include the use of paraeducators, special education teachers, and reading specialists that also pull from those classrooms frequently. We now turn to historical comparisons. First, elementary. Our starting year numbers are in line with the last 4 years. All but 2 grades fall within the range of the previous 4. However, all averages fall well below our target ratios. And with each, we have 10 elementary schools with 6 grade levels. So that's 60 data points in elementary that we track. 46 of the 60, or 77%, are at or below the target. Another metric that we are diligent about monitoring are the ratios for our Title I schools versus the others. Federal regulations require equal to lower class sizes for the Title I schools, and as you see here, we meet the regulated class size relationship. In middle school, you'll find the current numbers in the right column. All content areas are lower than last year, and the total average ranking falls within the range of the previous 4 years. When looking at the class level, one middle school has 5 sections of Algebra 1A, all at 30 students. Historically, there's some attrition that happens in these classes, therefore the principal is comfortable with these class loads. There are also 3 sections of Advanced English across 2 schools, all at 30 each. And the one school, an additional section, would drop class loads to 20 and the other school to 15. So the principals there have confirmed that they are also comfortable with those class sizes. And in high school, more similarity to recent years, where all 4 content averages fall within the range of the previous 4 years, as does the total average. In high school, we only have 2 class sections that are 30 or above, one at 30 and one at 31. The one class at 30 is a lone section of calculus. The other section is an atmospheric class at 31. Now at that school, there are 3 other sections of that course, but the school was unable to balance individual student schedules to obtain a class count under 30. That concludes my report. I'm happy to take any questions you may have.
I'm still looking.
Well, thank you for providing this. The first thing that jumps out at me is that there are 30 third graders in one class at Grafton Beth.
And I spoke to that principal. In that situation, the administration looked at that grade level, looked at the students involved, got input from the teachers, and so they arrived at that class being a 30. Now that class has additional paraeducator support above and beyond what it gives to the other classes.
And how often is the paraeducator in that class?
I would have to ask that question. I can get that to you in Friday notes.
Okay, thank you. I guess, one thing that at the end of the year or the beginning of next year, when we start to look at the 2017-18 school year, and we receive the SOL results, I think it would be, I don't know if you guys may already do this, but you look to see what the class size was, and in that class, what their SOL score result is. I would be very curious to find out with 30 students how that class performed with the SOL testing this year. Third grade, we've talked about this before, your reading, that's a very important year. 30 students is an enormous number, and that seems to be the largest class in the division.
I think it's, as I'm looking down the list, I think it's remarkable how many classrooms are below the targeted division averages. Yes, there's a couple that sit there and go, wow, because of whatever reason, but the majority of what I'm looking at is that we've had an enrollment drop or something, because we have a lot of classrooms where the teachers are at that division average. But we have fantastic teachers, so I think that whether it's a class of 18 or a class of 28, they do what they do best in that classroom, and that's teach those students. And with the right resources, students are going to come out great. It does make for a crowded room, which you're going to have that, but that looks good. Good information.
And I don't want to take away from the wonderful job everybody's doing. Go back in history.
Yes.
We had lower class sizes at one time, and we have been inching them up. Help me remember, was something like an 18-to-1?
Well, we had
a 20-to-1?
And more staff.
We had 2 schools that we purposely targeted with lower student-teacher ratios.
And that would be Magruder and York Elementary?
But that was also when we were using the extended year concept a little bit.
But no,
there, too, I think.
we had something, I thought we changed it across the board, and we inched it up and put more kids to one
Well,
teacher.
I
at
know
one point.
when after we gutted central office during the budget, and then we felt like we just couldn't cut that anymore, so then we had to look at our numbers. We started inching student here, student there, but we were still keeping way below, well, obviously, the state minimums or maximums, but
We've
we,
always
I think we
done that.
protected,
We
we
just-
protected it really well.
We've always stayed below state, and we've always prided ourselves in being way below state.
But I think that you look at other school divisions across the state, I wonder if they even can, in some cases, come close to what we've been able to accomplish here in YCSD.
You know, as I look at this, is there, and I ask myself again, I'm not the educator, is there a connection now to what we see elementary-wise and to what Dr. Badu just talked about as far as students and accomplishments? And I don't know. I just asked that as a question. Where I could remember where we had a smaller class size, we may have had more teachers, but we did have smaller class size, and was that, because we have inched up, has that been a difference? I don't know.
A question about high school. Are we staffed? I know Grafton High School had a sub for biology. Have we hired the teachers we need to hire for this year? This is the interim of the first quarter.
Yes.
How are we?
We are good in every area but special education. We're still 4 short, and I believe we've gotten somebody for that one class. I'd have to double check that, but I believe we've got one in the pipeline.
Thank you.
I have a question about high school, because I know that those where we see the numbers kind of creep up a little bit. But I know when the college-bound kids, the ones that are targeted, that's their path, they're on the way to, and they leave our high schools, they go to universities and colleges, and their first math class has 275 kids in it. They're sitting at a laptop or whatever device they're using in a stadium kind of setup. To prepare students for that world, we prepare them virtually. Okay, this is how we, I think is now a requirement for them to take one virtual course in high school. But I'm not going to be an advocate for larger classes and do a stadium kind of deal. But do we prepare our students in any way, shape, or form with that kind of concept they're going to get faced with when they enter the college world of those?
In terms of those numbers,
Yeah.
no.
No.
We're never going to
All
put
right.
them in a situation where it's going to be a stadium-style instructional practice, because we know that that's not
We don't have
in the
space,
best, we don't have the space, but it's not instructionally in the best interest of our students. So we do recognize that that's what they're going to be faced with, and so what we're going to try to do is provide them with rigorous instruction so that they're successful in that setting.
Do we bring in any, I know this is off topic, but like not a lecture series, but when someone comes in and speaks to the advanced English class and they bring all the classes together or something, then it's more of a lecture kind of piece, so they can get the taste of what that might feel like in a core class at the.
Not so much that style, and I don't know whether it occurs at each of our high schools, but what several of our high schools have done in the past is that in their AP or IB courses, they invite college students who are in their first year of college, typically over the Christmas holiday, because they go back a little bit later in January. So typically speaking, they've often invited them in the early part of January to talk about what they were prepared for, what they weren't prepared for, and how they can be better prepared as they move into.
And I would add to your point, I've got a son that's a senior and at a big university. And so he has those types of classes, but what colleges and universities do now, much better than we were in school, is having additional study hours with a teacher's assistant where they meet with smaller groups, and it's just a different feel out there. I mean, back in the 80s or 90s, they were looking to weed you out, and attrition is not a number that they are happy with anymore.
Good to hear.
My last question with regards, and this is just pretty much across the board for all high schools. Are we able to offer the courses that students want in the high schools? I know there was a time you had to have a certain number of students in a class to make that class run. At one point it was 15 to make a class run. And there was a concern then for Bruton, who may not have 15, but you still want to offer those classes. Do we have any situation like that in any of our 4 high schools that we still offer so that that diploma from one means the same as the diploma from all?
I would defer to Dr. Vladu, except for the fact that Bruton is a smaller school, and we do try to put some safeguards there, and their teacher-to-student ratio is significantly lower than the other 3 schools.
Yeah, for instance, so for AP chemistry, sometimes it's in the teens, and then it still goes. We don't want to deny students the opportunity to take those courses. Sometimes they make every other year. So I do think when we review every single course several times a week, and we look at all those ratios. I can tell you one instance where we eliminated a class just because there wasn't enough students in that course. Having said that, I think we also have to be responsible, and a class with 5, for instance, would not go. So we just to look at those 2 avenues, but we haven't had to deny students the opportunity to take courses.
While you're standing there, I'm sorry, is that?
No, yeah,
Okay.
that's fine.
New Horizons, all right, how are our numbers there? Did we end up with, students on waiting list? Did they have enough slots for us? The studies, the course of studies they offer was, our students got in, because always I wonder if, do we end up with students that don't get to go to New Horizons?
I don't have that data for you. I know we haven't heard of any instances of students wanting to go. I know their students sometimes may have to wait, but I haven't heard of any
Okay, good.
instances where students were denied the opportunity to go.
We do have students that would apply for Gov School that don't necessarily get in because they're applying along with students from other school divisions. We have a larger percentage of students in Gov School given our size
Good.
than our neighboring school divisions. And typically how we are budgeted for New Horizons is based on a 3-year average. So we tend to keep our numbers fairly constant.
Okay.
Sometimes we see increases and sometimes we see decreases, but part of it depends on what programs they're applying for and how many sections New Horizons is going to offer.
Well, I
But our
asked that-
students are typically pretty competitive.
Because I asked that because with the state push with the career tech side of the house, and really wanting to emphasize students to look at these paths that are available, is that going to increase a demand that either New Horizons is going to have to find a way to keep up with, or we're going to have to figure out how we're going to deal with students that are going, okay, well, you told me about this option, no, I can't get in it. And I don't want to be in that position, so there's a question I'll probably start asking as we go along with that new process of thinking, I guess.
And kind of to piggyback on that, one thing that I've been wondering, are we doing enough with IT education? Are we doing enough with computer science beginning at an earlier age? I know the Governor's School has a computer science strand. Are the kids really ready for that? What are we doing in middle school to get them ready, or what classes are we offering? Is that somewhere that we need to really start putting more attention in?
And if you'll
That's
allow,
where the jobs are.
if you'll allow a teaser, when Dr. Vladu brings program of studies to you in December, there has been a recommendation for a course revision.
Excellent.
To address that.
Excellent, I think that's
If you
neat.
can live with a teaser.
That excites me.
And the teaser also include possibly reviewing and bringing back that COE program.
That's a budget consideration, and we certainly had dialogue about that last year, and we can certainly have dialogue about it
I
again
hope we do,
this year.
because I know quite a few students that participated in that when it did exist, and that was their career path.
We've got a lot of employees in the division that were COE students.
Yes, we do.
Exceptional employees in the division.
And it was a very inexpensive budget line item that provided a path for success, so.
Thank you. Dr. James, did you have one thing that you wanted to add?
Yes, Ms. Haywood, what you were referring to some years ago, in elementary, we had different ratios. We had a dedicated ratio for kindergarten, one for first grade and one for second grade. Kindergarten was 18, first grade was 20, and second grade was 22. Then we have a division-wide average of 20 for the lower elementary. So I think that was the change you were referencing
And I
earlier.
remember each year we inched up, and I
Yes, ma'am.
specifically remember with the last superintendent, we truly made some changes.
Yes.
That
You
said
did,
it wasn't
Carl.
going, yeah. I wanted to say Carl, do you remember, but I went to Mark instead of Carl. I should have gone to
It's our
Carl.
encyclopedia.
Yeah.
Good gracious, he pulled
Thank
that
you,
right out
thank
there.
you.
I know nothing.
Yeah.
And thanks for Mount Vernon. You know, they added 4 classes this year because of as neighborhoods age and then get younger. 4 classes added, 2 kindergarten, I think 1 first and 1 second. And obviously, instead of stuffing to the max, we did the right thing and reassigned, added new teachers to accommodate those, to keep those class sizes where they should be. Good job.
You know, I think overall, I think we should feel pretty good about this. You know, it's always been this fine balance between, you know, how much staff do we have and what are our class sizes gonna be? And I think considering the restraints that we've been under for the last 5, 6 years or whatever, I'm very pleased that we're able to maintain that level, so, thank you.
And we'll, again, all the questions, Ms. Ford is recording, so we'll make sure that we get all the information to board members.
Thank you.
Get them all, Ms. Ford. All right, and our final topic this evening.
Yes,
Dr.
thank you,
Shander.
Dr. George. Now, Dr. James and Mr. Shearhart are going to provide an update on our draft 10-year facility master plan. It's actually, strike that, 6-year facility master plan.
Thank you, Dr. Shandor. Good evening, Dr. George, members of the board. Tonight, Mr. Shearhart and I will provide information about the 6-year facilities master plan. As Dr. Shandor stated, until this year, it was referred to as the 10-year facilities master plan, but to align with the program of the county and how they work with the capital improvement program, it's now been changed to a 6-year capital improvement program. Hopefully, we'll reuse that 6-year as throughout this presentation tonight. As you know, the 6-year facility master plan provides information and historical information about our school facilities. When you receive that document, there will be a lot of information there about each of our schools and what we see about the condition of those schools, as well as some information about attendance zones, enrollment, and of course, residential development. This plan also addresses requirements for new or expanded facilities and the major maintenance of existing facilities. This will be maintenance outside of what Mr. Dolak and his shop does with the daily upkeep of our buildings. Also, in this plan, it's going to be a recommended list of capital maintenance and capital construction projects, which will then be folded into the capital improvement program, and we'll be in this process through December until it comes to you for approval from the FMP, and then Mr. Jarrett will move it over to Mr. Jarrett, and then we'll work through the capital improvement program, and he'll work with you through that in November and in December at work sessions, as well as at board meetings with public forums and public hearings. So we have to look for along the way. I can say to you something I shared with you back last spring about the number of new residential developments. As you may remember, you've seen this map before that really gives you a number of new developments in certain elementary attendance zones. Now, these numbers reflect at full build-out. In my observations now, and Mr. Shearhart's observations, as we move through the county, some of those developments have not started, and some of them are very slow. They started initial work, but they're very slow. You may remember the Yorktown Crescent. Last spring, we moved it from the York zone to the Seaford zone, and it's in much the same state now as it was last spring.
They just left it.
Right. The Commonwealth Green, you know, we have quite concerns about Commonwealth Green. Recently, the developer went to the Board of Supervisors and asked for a delay of construction of the road to Route 17 from Constitution Drive, and to actually delay the townhome portion of that particular development. So the impact at Grafton Bethel has not been at the 75 students, as you may see on this chart. So to make a long story short, at Waller Mill, we're expecting 59 students at full build-out. But the reserve, they've completed the single-family homes. They built a model for the townhomes, and they're starting to work on 3 of the units, but majority, they are not really working as fast as we had anticipated or expected early on.
So the single-family homes
Are complete.
Are complete.
They are complete.
And filled, do you know?
Ma'am?
Filled?
Yes,
Boys?
ma'am.
Okay,
I don't think there's an empty home in that development.
okay.
I think they're all sold. Magruder was 178 more students. York Elementary, 428. Seaford, of course, 229. But the numbers are right there for you to see what we were expecting. But I think it's also important for us to look at something else. This chart, it comes from the County Planning Office. It gives us the number of approved active developments, pending and planned housing units. As you can see, by looking at the legend here, there are quite a number of planned developments for Magruder, Waller Mill, and of course in Seaford. Now, what does approved, active, pending, and planned really means? The term approved active refers to housing units where a site plan has been submitted, approved, and the developer is moving forward with construction. Pending refers to housing units where a site plan has been submitted, is under review, but it's not yet been approved. And of course, plan means a site plan has not been submitted for review. So we're in various stages of progress in each of these developments. So this is going to impact our conversation as we move forward with discussion of a new elementary school. I think the question is going to be for us now, when do we need this school, not if? Because you can see from these numbers, especially at the elementary level, that's where we're going to be most impacted. You can also see for our secondary zones, you see the same numbers. You know, that's the same number of developments, but the impact, of course, is going to be less at the secondary level than it would be at the elementary level. With all of that in mind, from my analysis and talking with staff, these are the schools that have the greatest potential for increased enrollment. Grantham Bethel, because of Commonwealth Green, and also because of the townhomes at Martin's Farm, right across from the intersection of Dare Road and Route 17. You may have seen the work over there. At Magruder Elementary School, of course, we have Whitaker's Mill. They're moving forward with that, but it's still slow progress being made on that one. The Marquee, nothing is happening in the Marquee. And of course, the homes, the additional homes in Country Club Estates, nothing is happening there. At Seaford, Osborne Landing, they put in the roads, but I haven't seen a house being constructed there yet. Of course, the Crescent is now in the Seaford zone. It's no construction. They're not going upright with buildings now. And Waller Mill, we talked about the reserve. They've finished the single-family homes. They have not finished or even started that much on the townhomes. They have 3 under construction as well as the model. And also Burgess's Quarters. They used to be 1776 Hotel. You know where that is on Bypass Road? Some of you may know that. You know, they started to put in some of the infrastructure, but again, they're not even putting the curves or even paved the base coat for asphalt, which they typically do when they start construction. At Yorktown Elementary, we know about Yorktown Arts. Last year that we got a number of students from there. I can't tell you the number of students this year. It's much lower than it was last year from that particular development. Also, Rose Hill, I talked to Tim Cross, the county planner, about that last week. He said that may be some activity, but nothing is really moving there. Huntsville is also in the York Elementary zone. We'll find nothing is really happening there at Yorktown Elementary. So with that in mind.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yes, ma'am, sure.
For all these places that you said that there's nothing going on, if the developer said Monday, they're gonna start moving some of these areas, can you predict how long it would take for some of these areas to be built?
Right, to
I mean,
reach
we're
full
talking
build out?
A year, 2 years? You know what I'm trying to say?
Yes,
That
ma'am.
gives us a chance to play catch up?
Yes, ma'am, but you know, that's really a hard question to answer because so much is unknown. If you look at Nelson's Grant, there beside Food Line, that intersection of Fort Yusuf Boulevard and Route 17, that one started development before Yorktown Arts. Yorktown Arts was completed.
Okay.
Nelson's Grant is not. They started before the apartments in Commonwealth Green.
Was completed for the length of time?
Oh, I would say about a year. It was interesting, if you want to talk about how they built it and put in the infrastructure, it's quite interesting to watch them do that, how they save some time by the approach they use. But everything there is cookie cutter, so to speak, so it's much easier in that kind of design when you're doing townhomes versus single-family homes or live-above or condominiums. So each one takes a lot of time. A lot depends on the particular developer and the capital, the money that they have to move forward. You may remember in our experience, Creekside Landing, how quickly, that's a pretty good sized development. And it didn't take long to complete that one. It was almost full build out instantaneously. But we're not seeing that now with most developments.
A lot of it depends, like I said, on the developer and the market itself. And my neighborhood, when they expanded the other street that had been planned for 15 years, and they finally got to it after the market started falling, it took 4 years to fill out 20 houses. to build out, Phil. So nothing's going to spring up in your backyard and all of a sudden, oh, we got 300 more students in a blank. I just don't see that happening unless tomorrow everybody gets a raise like $50,000 and the economy's cooking.
There was a time that we were truly trying to play catch-up.
Oh,
It
yeah.
was almost like, please, county, stop
Yes.
approving these
Yeah,
subdivisions.
from
Let
the
us
late
play
90s
catch-up.
through
Yeah.
the mid-2000s, yeah, it was a go-go.
That was just.
Yeah, that's a hard question to answer, but that is something that we're, as Dr. James continues the presentation, we're going to talk about how we're going to monitor that moving forward.
Okay, thank you. So given all of that, we have two strategies to deal with increased enrollment. One you may know, we've talked about before, is review current enrollment data and balance enrollment across the 10 existing elementary schools by using a consultant. As you may know, we put out a request for proposals a long time ago. Initially, we didn't have any respondents. Thursday, we had 3.
Oh, super.
So we now have 3, and it's my work and work with some of my staff, working with the county staff to review those and then select a vendor to actually help us with or guide us through this process of balancing the elementary attendance zones. So I look forward to hearing more from that as we go through this particular process. And the second strategy would be naturally to construct an elementary school. Because sooner or later, given the numbers we talked about earlier, we're going to need the school. And the question is, as the discussion has centered earlier, is when. So what we're planning to do, and Mr. Shearhart will share this with you more, is to request funding construction dollars for the new elementary school in FY 18 and 19. This is for construction dollars. And we think this is a reasonable time frame, given the process it will take to issue a request for proposals, hire an architect, and then complete the A&E design process. So typically, that will take you sometimes around 18 months. So as Dr. Shandor said earlier, we need to watch this closely, so we don't have the kind of situation we talked about in the 90s, where we were looking for capacity and we didn't have that. So we think this will give us some flexibility as we work through the process of monitoring those developments, staying in touch with county staff, and seeing just when is the appropriate time that we know we need to have classroom spaces available for the students that are going to appear on our dual steps.
And just to correct one thing, the years are 19 and 20.
Yeah,
Back to
19
the
and
20.
20.
Yeah, you said 18 and 19.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And I was reading 19 and 20.
I was looking through the budget
Right.
thinking, okay,
Yeah.
that's what we
And it
were
says
on.
19 and 20 right there.
Okay,
Okay,
so 1 year delay.
so with that in mind, there's not any questions, then I'll turn to Mr. Shearhart. He'll talk about the actual projects that are in the facilities master plan.
So the first thing I'd like to touch on is what deferred maintenance is, or what is in the capital improvement plan, or capital improvement program. Deferred maintenance is normal building maintenance that is funded by general operating budget each fiscal year. Maintenance that must be delayed through fiscal constraints or other reasons is called deferred maintenance. These maintenance projects are determined by an annual assessment of each building's physical status. Deferred maintenance projects in excess of $30,000 are funded through the CIP. So we'll look at some of these capital maintenance projects here. Okay. So several of these areas are HVAC repair and energy management, roof repair and replacement, and other projects. Now, one of the reasons that HVAC and roof are on this list is because those are very high dollar projects, and that's one of the reasons why we focus on those all the time, because of the cost involved there. These projects are also placed in the capital improvement program based on security concerns in the buildings, the age of the structure, the building conditions, the cost, and also current residential construction. So the first of these is the elementary schools. Now, I've rearranged the capital improvement plan or program this year, rather than going just by topics or by projects, names, or categories. I went by elementary schools, middle schools, high schools, to kind of allow us to have an easier way to find the projects in the CIP. So the first set of projects here is for the elementary schools, and the red numbers here that are lined through are where the project was originally placed last year in the last final approved CIP, the final approved by the school board. And the green numbers are where it's located at, or where we're recommending it be located at this year. So the first 3 of these are for Coventry. You notice we're moving forward, or recommending moving forward, the windows, the metal roof replacement, and the classroom HVAC replacement, all to FY18. The plan is here to go in and touch the building once in FY18 and get out of there, and that way leave the school in peace after that, rather than going in 3 separate years. You do notice there that in the purple numbers are numbers that have been adjusted up or down. And you notice I moved from FY21, I moved forward the classroom addition HVAC from FY21 to FY18. You noticed it increased from $600,000 to $700,000. And that's due to a different type of HVAC system we'll be using there and different type of fresh air that we'll be using on this building. So it costs slightly more. The next projects down are for Dare Elementary School, and this is the movement of the Dare Elementary breezeway enclosure from FY18 to 19, from 19 to 18 to increase security at this school, and also the movement of Dare Elementary School parking lot expansion from FY19 to 20. And we are having to increase that from $315,000 to $520,000. This is due to a change in scope and size. The school had a civil engineer there a couple of years ago, and he came in with some ideas of how we could change the flow of traffic for the buses and the vehicles, trying to separate those two. And taking that into account, and also some of the other needs there, we're going to have to probably create an embankment there and a couple other things which are going to drive the cost of that parking lot expansion up. So that's why the increase there to $520,000. We've also moved forward the replacement of the gym floor at Dare Elementary School and increased that slightly from $60,000 to $70,000. This is based on current pricing levels. You notice also there in FY23, have the placement of the Dare Elementary School roof coating for $600,000, and that is to extend the life of that roof. Now then, I'm going to jump down a little bit here to the next three more here for Mount Vernon. Mount Vernon, we're planning to close the breezeway there and move that from FY19 to FY18. This to also increase security, moving the bus loop and parking lot paving from 21 to 18. That parking lot is in dire straits right now, part of it. So it needs to be moved forward, or recommended for it to be moved forward. And then also the movement of the HVAC replacement at Mount Vernon from 19 to FY19 to 20. And that's due to some of the work that our HVAC technicians have done, replacing some heat exchangers and things on there, on the rooftop equipment to extend its life. So the next page has several projects here for Seaford Elementary School. This is a parking lot, increasing the parking lot expansion. You see it in purple there from $300,000 to $310,000, and this is merely for making the bottom line come out right. That's why the $10,000 increase there. The moving the window replacement forward from 22 to 21, and the Seaford Elementary expansion from 23 to 21. And this is so that both of those projects dovetail. I don't want to go in there and replace the windows and then have to take the windows out the next year or a couple of years later when we do the expansion. So let's dovetail those two projects together. That's why we put them together in 21. Then lastly there, Tabb Elementary School, window and door replacement, recommend moving that from FY19 to 18. And Tabb Elementary School, metal roof replacement from FY22 to 18. This is again to touch the building only once. This is the same type of roof that we did at, we're planning the same type of installation we did at Magruder. We put a new metal roof over the top of the existing metal roof, so minimize exposure to the elements while we're doing the re-roofing. So next one here is middle schools. And we have a couple of things there. One is the movement of the Queens Lake Middle School 6th classroom addition. We're moving that one back from FY21 to 22, and also reducing it slightly, and this is for budget alignment. But we're recommending moving it back because of the lack of residential construction in that area. So we don't think it warrants having it in that year. And notice several new items inserted in 23, and it's the Queens Lake Middle School locker room renovation for $300,000, the placement of Tabb Middle and Tabb Middle HVAC replacement, and the locker room renovation of Tabb Middle also in FY23 as well. So the next project, the next schools will be Grafton Complex. This one here's a few things running around on this page. You see all the purple and red and green, so let me explain what's going on here. The first line there, Grafton Middle School, you notice there's a change. It turned purple there in FY '21, and that's because we reduced it from $3,250,000 to $2,980,000. And that reduction is due to the fact that the mechanical engineers I've been talking to are recommending that we do not remove. And the initial plan was to replace all the piping in the building when we replaced all the heating and air conditioning equipment. Their recommendation is to leave that piping in place. It's steel and copper. The chemistry, water chemistry has been maintained and the piping is in good shape. They feel like we have no problems at all using that piping for another 20 years. They feel like it's not even a problem. So we will reduce the amount of money required to replace the heating and air conditioning equipment in that building. Notice the next one down is the movement of the Grafton High School HVAC from FY '20 to FY '18. Those units will be 22 years old at that point in time. I'm not sure how old the air conditioning units or the heat pumps are at your house, but 20 years, 22 years, you're pushing it. So I think we need to start changing the equipment out there before we have multiple failures. Notice also, this is a good one. The next one down there is Grafton High School, Grafton Complex, replacing and coating the low slope roof there. You notice in FY '17 we had $2 million, and now in FY '18 we had another $1 million. The anticipated cost for replacing that and coating that roof was $2.75 million. We got a phenomenally good bid, so we were getting the entire roof done for $2 million. So that allows us to redistribute that $1 million that was slated for FY '18 to other projects, so that freed up that money there to other projects. Going down, we're talking about rotating the main offices at the Grafton High School and Middle School, moving that forward from FY '20 to FY '18, and then replacing the cooling towers from 19 to 18, and that's to bring it in conjunction with replacing the HVAC in the high school area.
So that's good for both sides of the building, correct?
Yes, the cooling towers are for both sides of the building, that's correct. Now, I'm going through here real fast. Now, I don't know if you want me to stop or you want to ask any questions here. So, okay, the next slide there will be the high schools. And I have a few changes here. We're recommending moving the Bruton High School, renovating the locker rooms back from 22 to 23. And that's due to the budget. But also, we're going to insert the Bruton High School, renovate the restrooms in 23 as well. So that would put both projects in the same fiscal year. So we should be able to get some good prices by doing it all at the same fiscal year at Bruton High School. Now, there are a couple purple things on that page also. York High School, this is replace the low slope roof, replace and coat the low slope roof phase 1. That has been reduced from $1,325,000 to $1,240,000. But if you look at the phase 2, I increased that one from $330,000 to $415,000, and that was to bring the bottom line and keep the bottom numbers in a line. So I effectively moved $75,000 from one project, phase 1 to phase 2. And then get close to the end here, other projects. You notice the first one there, kitchen equipment, FY '22 is $340,000. I raised it $6,000 for the budget alignment. I did move the Bailey Field synthetic turf replacement back to 23. Now, down here where we have the modular classrooms, there was some pretty major changes here. Because there's no construction going on around Magruder currently, we're recommending that we don't get the second modular classroom at Magruder, because remember last year we had talked about potentially setting up a second modular classroom there if needed up on the front asphalt up there, the playing ground up in the front of the school. And that would have been an extra $1,150,000 to do that. So we've reduced that in FY '19 down to only $200,000, and that $200,000 would then be to pay the leases on the current modular buildings we have at York Elementary and Magruder. So a significant decrease there. Also, we have a reduction of funding for temporary modulars in FY '20 from $400,000 again, because we're not having to pay the lease on the new building, to $200,000, and a reduction in FY '21 from $300,000 to $200,000, again, because we don't have that third modular. And then a redistribution of this $300,000 in FY '22, because hopefully we'll have the new school ready and be able to get rid of the modulars at that point in time. We do have a new project inserted there, and that is toward the bottom there in FY '23. That's the placement of a division-wide, the installation of a division-wide fiber optic network. This is phase 1, and that would be for $5 million. Then last line is the new elementary school would be in FY '18, do the same thing, Dr. James.
Yes.
FY '19 and FY '20. So the funding would come from those 2 years rather than from FY '18 and '19. The A&E funding would be from the, not from this funding, this money here, this source, but it would be from the stabilization money instead, the $2 million we need for A&E. So that takes us to the last page.
Bottom line.
I don't hear any. All of these, yeah, anyway, here we go. So explaining this last page here, you note at the bottom that the required funding level, which is in the red, well, no, the red is what the county wanted us to stay with, and the black is our numbers, is our bottom line numbers. Note that the required funding level in FY '18 dropped from $15 million to $9 million, and that the funding level in FY '20 increased from $9 million to $15 million, effectively flipping the totals between FY '18 and FY '20. This means that the total funding over the 6-year period was held constant, and that the funding in all other years remained level. So that's the end of the capital improvement program that I have in my presentation. Do you have any questions? I went through an awful lot real fast.
You did a really fabulous job going through all that. It's good to see that you're now able to strategically, surgically, I guess, really look at the projects and study. Because I was that one person that asked, I guess this time last year, do we need someone to come in and look at another set of eyes to look at what we have going on so that the systems don't fail and what's happening with some of our buildings and infrastructure. Sound like to me you've done a fabulous job of that yourself and your staff and people in Carl's area, because you've been able to look at priority, you know, where's the red flags going up, and you're making those recommendations that this needs to be done now because the system's 22 years old, it's going to fail. That kind
I don't think it's just me. I got a lot of help.
You got a lot of help,
I got
right,
Greg
exactly.
Golak and
But
this guy.
exactly, so the team itself is just doing what needs to be done to keep our infrastructure for students up and running. My question, though, is that with the RFP out, 3 people have come in, and y'all gonna study the redistricting, looking at the boundaries and such. And what school year what are we planning on for that taking effect? If we pick our company over the next couple of months or something, would that be for next school year?
Yes, we're looking at the 2017, 2018 school year.
Okay.
Which
So,
means once we get a proposal, we have much time to go through and review those proposals, I guess someone on contract, and then we need to start going.
and then you gotta work with the public and have your meetings and all the stuff we have to do ahead of time to move to rebalance things. So the concerns that are being raised, especially in the York and Magruder areas of zones, next school year, they're gonna see relief just because of what most likely is gonna happen with the rebalance, the balancing of those attendance zones. And then we just watch what happens with construction and projects.
You're exactly right, Mr. Manfred.
You know, Mark, one of the concerns that I had is, do you rezone when you have these areas under some stage of development? We don't know when they're gonna restart, and that was the question I threw out there. Do you rezone and then have to rezone again once you have these developments? It's unfair, and we've done this many years ago, moving students twice. You really don't wanna do that. And so,
It's
Hard to say, do you, don't you?
well, it is, but I sit here and I think about the fact that it doesn't happen very often in a community where you have some major variables playing, that you got to work with. One is a new school construction. That's going to change the dynamics of balancing attendance zones. Growth, which if it all happens in one big, chunk, then you got to deal with that. And then your areas where you have overcrowding, or your numbers are up, or you can feel it because you moved in modular units to take care of things. So I think we're going to be in that area of where it may come down to, we may have to do something twice over a period of a lengthy period of time. But still, I think that it's not perfect, but when you have a community that's could literally in 2 zones grow very rapidly, very quickly, and then you have a construction of a new school at some point, and it's not if, it's when, just like Carl said, and then the fact that we're dealing with a couple of zones that are really bulging, that is what we're going to have to deal with. But I think bringing in a consultant that's going to help guide, form, transparency, openness, making sure people know these are our plans, and so that they may not all be liked by everyone, but at least they'll know what the plan is. It's going to be difficult, but I think we'll get through it. So.
I have a question. I'm just curious, which projects, as we're trying to look at, which projects we can put off and which ones we can't. I'm looking at some of these, like a metal roof replacement, looks like from 18 to 22, for 4 years, it's the same price. If I'm looking at that correctly, $1,050,000?
On the,
Put it at the same, yeah,
Which
FY 18. Actually, I'm just, as an example, Tab Elementary, we went from 22 to 18, but we're still at $1,050,000 over 4 years. I'm just wondering, is this a time, number one, is this a time when we're finding, we're enjoying that things the costs aren't going up as much every year? Because 4 years is a long time. And the other question is, if they are what specifically do we see more, say more increases on? What type of repairs and what type of replacements do we see there going up more each year, if you follow me?
Yes, sir. One of the things here is the county has asked us not to inflate the costs over multiple, we could have inflated the cost for Tab Elementary in out years. They've asked us not to do that. So we do not increase this number, project how much it's going to cost in the future here. So that's why the number is constant there. That $1,050,000 is what it's going to cost now.
Right.
If we wait till 22, I'll have to go to the roofing consultants as we move through the CIP,
Okay.
and that number will be growing. That number will inflate as we get closer to the time that we need the money.
I guess, yeah, I'm not sure the whole process makes sense to do it that way, but, so I guess my question would be, are there certain things that if we wait and we put off, they're gonna increase exponentially as opposed to other things that maybe aren't gonna be quite as, I'm sure y'all have looked at that, I'm just more curious than anything. I mean, does
The one-
HVAC, is that something that goes up dramatically every year or two, or?
It does increase every year, every January. But the biggest thing, the biggest one we could really knock down the cost on is the roofs. As if we can coat more of the roofs and we can bring some more of that roof coating forward, that would prevent a lot more costs later on, because then we won't have to replace the entire roof. If we can coat that roof and protect it, we can coat them for 20 years and get a 20-year warranty out of them. And it's dramatically cheaper just to go ahead and coat it than it is to go ahead and tear it off and replace it. Also, the fact that you don't have to open the roof up to coat it. Grafton Complex, you see what's going on there, as we're just tearing off a small portion of the roof. If we had to take off the entire roof there, it'd be crazy there, So right now, we're just taking off a small portion of the roof and then we're gonna coat it all. So it'll be a great roof when we're done with it, but until, we gotta get to that point.
Let me ask, just maybe I'm asking the same thing. I think you've answered my question for the most part, but, the factors that we use when you're looking at what has to be done now, what has to be later. We're looking at safety, we're looking at security, those types of
And
things.
age and condition.
Age and condition. Are we also looking at how much extra money it's gonna cost us if we do wait? In other words, this project's gonna cost us twice as much in 3 years or 4 years, and this one may cost us, 25% more than, those types of things. Is that something that y'all are able to do? I mean, I just wonder if that is or should be part of the process.
I would say that we are pretty much, no, we're just replacing it based on the age and on the condition of the equipment. And sometimes we don't have the luxury of trying to jump out there and pick something up and bring it forward.
Yeah.
Just to save some money. I mean, I can save some money now, but I don't know where our budget's gonna be at in 3 years. I don't know. Hopefully we'll have more money, right?
Yeah.
I think that's part of it. I think
Yeah.
that gives you the flexibility of every year. Now that it's a 6-year plan, we are gonna see, just over from last year to this year, we've seen projects come up and move back in the plan. Again, it's based on the aging condition, safety, all of those things are the criteria for moving things up and back in the FMP and CIP.
Mr. Sherhart, while you're here, and speaking of Grafton, can you tell us how the Grafton complex weathered the storm this weekend?
It did really well, in my estimation. There were some leaks that were the old leaks that we've had since the building was open. So we put buckets under those and tried to stem the flow there, but it was mostly drips. There was some very small leaks. I mean, they were where it would run, but there's very few of those, 3. And there was some water getting under the doors for lack of weather stripping underneath the doors, the old doors. So we're trying to replace those doors as well. But the building did very well. There was no major flooding or anything like that like we had, when that roof drain was open. There was nothing like that throughout the building. We put some buckets and some trash cans underneath everything Saturday evening, and they had just a little bit of drying and wet dry pick up on Sunday, and that was it.
Now, when you say old leaks, the leaks that the building has suffered for the 2 decades, once the roof is completed, will that take care of those old
Yes.
leaks?
Yes, that's the plan.
I have one.
Roofer just hasn't got that far. I'll tell you something that, I just wanted to put this out there. Don Slater said something the other day I thought was very interesting. This September was the wettest September in recorded history.
Wow.
And our roofer was trying to put a roof on the building in the wettest September in recorded history.
Just
So
start
he's
off.
done amazing stuff to do what he did.
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. I just have one quick question, because I assume that this is a long-term savings from RICSD, but the fiber optic network that we've added to the CIP for FY23 Phase 1, right now we rent it or pay for it or buy it by the chunk or whatever we do with our internet and bandwidth and such. So by doing this, we actually would own our own internal network of fiber optic, I assume, so that we're no longer leasing or paying for these monthly charges or annual charges we would save over the time.
And you're asking me a question I can't answer, but Doug Mead's in the room and he can answer that
I think
question.
people need to know that sometimes we do projects to save money in the long run, and I'm wondering if this is one of those, so.
So actually, it probably in the end would not save a tremendous amount of money in the operating budget, because when you own an $8 million fiber optic network, it's going to cost a couple $100,000 a year to maintain that network. That's not cheap. Things happen to things that you put in the ground and run miles up and down the highway. I would anticipate some savings, but it will not be, complete savings of our telecommunications budget. And it would only save the part of the telecommunications budget that is the wide area network. This would not be our broadband connection to an internet service provider, and it would not be our connections to the public telephone network for our voice communications, our PRIs. It would be the wide area network between our schools.
So the benefit of owning our own fiber optic is reliability,
More bandwidth,
more bandwidth.
more bandwidth for the money.
So the studies that are showing that these are the needs of our schools because of technology, this is going to accommodate those needs internally, basically.
The studies that show the growth in bandwidth demands for schools would put us into budgeting millions of dollars instead of hundreds of thousands of dollars a year for bandwidth. to meet those needs if we were going to pay for it through third-party service providers. So this would save us lots of money in the future, but not in terms of what we're budgeting today in the operating budget, because we're budgeting for a fraction of the bandwidth we expect to need in the future.
Is this going to be a project that's possibly jointly with county buildings too, or just school buildings, or has it even gotten to that discussionary point?
We've mentioned it to the county. The budgetary dollars we've put in there are for the schools buildings. But of course, there's a number of buildings that as we go down the road and past the school building, between two school buildings, when we're past county buildings, so it would be a nominal increase to turn in and bring them on board as well. So we would keep those communication channels open.
Have other school divisions in Virginia or county governments done anything like this?
Yes, we have Newport News.
Newport News?
All of Newport News owns their own fiber optic network.
School and city?
I know it's the school. I believe it includes the city. Yes.
Didn't know that. It's good to know. Thank you.
Thanks, Doug.
Thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions this evening?
No, sir.
We've received a lot of good information.
That was great. Thank you, Mr. Shearhart. Appreciate it, James. Everybody, well, I think that does it for us. We will be back on the 24th of October for our regular meeting. And we pray the hurricanes away. Have a good night.